morning, one and all. I am Rabia Hanfi, Assistant Professor, SIRT CSC Department. Today we are going to see the topic of cloud computing and which is utility computing. Utility computing comes under cloud computing. It comes in second unit. So we'll start with it. Here we are going to see the introduction of utility computing, process of utility computing, example of utility computing, and benefit of utility computing. In introduction part, we are seeing what is utility computing. Utility computing basically a service provisioning model that offers computing resources such as hardware, software, and network bandwidth to a client as when they require them on an on-demand basis. The service provider charges only as per the consumption of the services rather than fixed charge or flat rate. So, utility computing is basically a subset of cloud computing that allow user to scale up and scale down based on their needs. Client, user, or business acquire such as data storage space, computing capabilities, application services, virtual server, or even hardware rentals such as CPU, monitor, and input devices. Utility computing model is based on conventional utility and originates from the process of making IT resources as easily available as traditional public utilities such as our electricity, gas, water, telephone service. These are some examples. Consumer pay has electricity bill as per the number of unit consumed, nothing more and nothing less. Similarly, utility computing work on the same concept, which is pay per use model. The service provider owns and manages the computing resources, computing solution or resources or infrastructure, and the client is simply subscribe them and charge for that subscribed services in a manner without any upfront cost. The concept of utility computing is simple. It provides processing power when you need it, where you need it, and at the cost of how much you use it. Now, utility computing follow a process of working. It is a 5-step process. The concept of utility computing is transformable. Service provider match the demand with the delivery and almost immediate basis. It enables business to transform their organization from a traditional environment to a dynamic environment, or dynamic, adaptive, or service oriented one. When demand exceed capacity, utility computing becomes the perfect example or perfect solution to top up their resources as and when they need it. However, major questions remain unanswered is where and how to get started with utility computing. So, let's understand that first step of utility computing is determine the need. The initial step of involve are assign internal organization need and then combine the service and resource required. Utility computing hosting center exist for a reason. They provide valuable, tightly integrated, fully customized utility computing solution and resources as per the client need. However, if kind or all of this will not matter if your organization is clueless about their need or their objective. Step 2, evaluate the service provider's claim. When you are going to take someone's service or going to use someone's service, so you have to clear something first. Once your objective are determined, evaluated, if the utility computing solution will align with your goal and mission or not. You have to evaluate that. Understand which task will be supported and what level of resource or service will be provided is important. Then we have to ask some question with ourselves. Will the service provider customize solution according to your need? Will they leverage automation? Will their collection of computing resources, software and configuration provide maximum benefit? These services are evaluated, and evaluate the service providers offer is essential to determine whether their service will empower user to be a more effective and accomplish their goal. Now, third step is access the health of a computing resource. To access the health of computing resource, it is critical to deploy resource monitoring tools. So, you have to look after its security, dynamic resource configuration requirement. You have to monitor utility computing resource involved, identifying failure of networks, failure of storage and application resources. One of the best way to make monitoring simple is using collection of industry standard and site specific tools and local configuration file to be completed in sync with the overall utility computing environment. Now, fourth step is identify the resource provisioning requirement. The next step involves analyze the service provider capability to customize and configure resource to meet customers' need and establish a load balance without over provisioning or under provisioning. Next step is map out a time frame. Once the need, objective and all type of resources are determined, the final step for architecting a utility computing solution involves mapping out the schedule. Identify when a specific resource might be needed or how much time it is needed. This allows the service provider to release unused resource early and improve the overall resource utilization strategy. Now, example of utility computing is utility computing model became one of the most popular IT provisioning model. It offers many advantages. So the example of utility computing model is travel reservation service, online retailer, startups and small businesses. Most of the time these three models are required because whenever online demand increase or in peak hour resources are demand of resource is increase, and in low time the demand of resource is decreased. So these model are best example for utility computing. Now, key benefit of utility computing for enterprise. So first is remove the complexity of IT management. Before utility computing, it became prominent. The older system involved being hooked onto the safekeeping of IT manager, large block of resources. Utility computing has been instrumental in reducing the complexity of architecture, IT architecture, and their management. Signing up with utility service provider absolves the user from the responsibility of maintaining IT resources, including hardware and software. The need for spending time and resource for the maintenance of server gets completely eliminated with this model. Save valuable time and resource. Growing complexity of network are leading to the consumption of a large amount of resource and management time. When complexity is decreased, the utility computing when complexity of network is decreased, the time also management time also decreased, then maintenance time is also decreased. So IT provider, or we can say that service provider utilize their time for another purpose, and organization use this beneficial time for their upgradation and further important tasks. Now third point is offer complete flexibility. Whenever you require resource, you can use them, and when you don't need those resources or these resources, you just free them and pay for that particular time when you use that resources. Utility computing provide utmost flexibility in terms of availability of resources, on demand uses, billing method, and ease of accessing data anytime and anywhere. Fifth is shorter time to the market. Utility computing allow resources to be supplied in small incremental bites as and when they required by the organization. This helps organization deliver fast and demonstrable output. So this is all about the utility computing. In my next topic we are going to see the Ajax on more services.